High heel, academia.
Hey everyone, Connie here from the Doppers, and I'm going to show you the Nomu deck that I took to Alicante. I only played it once, and I should have played it for the main event because I would have won with it. Well, let's just look at Nomu first off. He's a 5-hand size character with 35 health. He has a really cool enhance that just says, I'ma hit you. Giving your non-throw attacks a damage bonus equal to the printed difficulty is amazing when you play some of these higher diff attacks. The damage just scales amazingly. Now what do we have on the defensive front? We have his response, which is commit a foundation, and before the damage step of an unblocked attack, reduce its damage to 6. So this allows us to really not fear the Godzillas and Dekus of the world. We can just be like, no, we've got a foundation up, cool, make it 6. We can probably take that, and then do other things on top of that. Character all round is actually a really solid 5-hander. He's actually one of the better 5-handers for the games in general, just because he does do a bit of both. So let's run through the actions for the deck. So the actions I'm running with is Season the Advantage. I just run 2 copies of this. There's a world you could run 4 and go completely mental. Personally, I just like the 2 as a little bit of a supplemental piece to the deck. So this card has got a form that says your next attack is +2 speed, and then the real kind of part about it is card pool responds. After you play an attack, you flip 1 rival foundation and then you build this card face down. So you're giving something 2 speed, you're flipping probably a defensive piece of your opponent's, and you're getting the momentum. All for a 3 diff action is actually pretty blooming good, and it can be used as a block. It's got a 2 mid block, why not? I just think it's an all round great card. As I say, it's a good supplemental. It's like something that you can just hit like their moment of normalcy and stuff like that, hit their uniques. Really good. You could argue for 4, I like it at 2. Next on up, we're going to run through all of the attacks. All of these attacks I've kind of like picked for certain reasons, sort of thing, so I'm going to go through them all quickly. So, Electric Moth, I like this card in Nomu because it gets the 4 damage. It's 3 high for 4, now it's 3 high for 8. But I like the fact that I can discard a card to draw 2, so netting 1 card. But if the opponent's at 10 or more foundations, draw 3 instead. 5-handers always have the problem of not being able to like get enough cards. This is just one of those ones. Chuck a card you don't need away for the hope of finding potentially 3 that you could use. I really like this. I like it at a 2 of, solely for the fact that the other cards do something similar kind of thing, so I don't need to put all my eggs in a basket of discarding when I can just draw. So we'll go into the absolute greatest attack ever for this deck, which is Battle Aura Release. So this again, similar to Electric Moth, I can do a flip 1 foundation to draw a card. So I like the idea of being able to just flip something that's not of use, especially some of these 0 diffs, and then draw a card. Love it. Perfect. The second part though is why I genuinely think this card's just disgusting in Nomu. This attack gets +X damage, X equals the number of face downs in your stage, up to a maximum of 4. You're going to have face downs, half this stuff flips. That's great. Also Season Advantage builds down face down. So you have this easy 4 damage, so it's now 4 high for 8, then you Nomu, so it's 4 high for 12. It just immediately becomes an absolute value train. Card is so good, this is why I run 4 of these. Next on up, we have 3 copies of Ignited Arrow. So this card again is another one of those just value train scenarios. The enhance on this is all we care about. It says, if this attack is blocked, discard cards from the top of your deck until you hit an attack, and then you take that attack and add it to your hand. The idea of throwing a 2 high for 8 at somebody and forcing them to either have to take damage so they don't find another attack, or block and hope for the best. At that point they've already clogged their pool by 1 by blocking this to start with, meaning the next attack that we actually find has probably got a better chance of hitting. Card just is one of those kind of silly ones. Nomu just makes it really value heavy. So I do like this because I don't mind when people block stuff, especially if they do this early and force those scenarios. Next, we're running 4 copies of Earthbreaker. This card should just have Nomu printed on it. It is absolutely mental. So it's a 3 low for 5, but obviously Nomu's going to make that 3 low 10. It's got stun 2. It's got a blitz that says if your rival has more foundations than you, you draw a card. Again, we're a 5-hander. We tend to lose that race, so we're going to get that blitz usually more often than not. The card pool response is after you've drawn one or more cards, you get a +1 damage. Again, you can have all these other draw outputs and stuff like that and get this extra damage floating about. And if this attack deals damage, destroy one rival foundation that was committed during this attack. So this card just says a million and one things of text. I really do enjoy this one a lot, and it just hits for an absolute ton. It forces also extra damage, as we do a lot of our things like Battle Aura and stuff like that as well. And honestly, great card. Just a brilliant Nomu card. Right, so let's jump on to the next one, which is just, for me, it's a personal favourite. I liked Capture Net from set 1. This is like the upgrade version, which I just think really is funny. But in Nomu, this is also one of those ones, again, just incredible value. So Net Launcher is a 4 mid for 5, it means it's really a 4 mid for 10. And if we do the Enhance, commit 3 face-up foundations that don't share a name, shockingly easy, we get another 3 speed, making it 7 speed. We get another 6 damage, meaning it's up to 16 damage, and it gains stun 2. That, for the cost of 3 foundations, is value. I love this card. Also, the bottom Enhance, spend a momentum to build a foundation from a discard pile, and then you give your opponent 1 foundation as well, means that you only really need to have 2 in play, have a momentum, and then just find one that's just going to be the next and third to commit for the top Enhance, which is what I actually did in Alicante when I played this. This card, I run it as a one-off because specifically doing that, it's a bit janky, but when it happens and when it works, it just forces an absolute situation that most of the time the opponent has to now either deal with or hope for the best and take 16. I don't know. So, running one of them. Next up, let's run 2 copies of Tetra Terra Onslaught. This is another one of those, we just want to find as much value as possible for the least amount of effort. So, again, Echo is a great thing to have in Nomu scenarios because we get to chuck an attack twice basically, and on top of that, this is a 5 diff attack, which means this is actually 9 damage for on a 4 high, and it allows us to also say when we do Echo it, it becomes easier to play and also comes in with more speed. So it's going to just super punish the opponent for having momentum. The Enhance I like, I don't fully rely on it, but I do think it kind of finds its own way. Lose 3 health if this attack deals damage. Add 1 card with a printed difficulty 4 or less from your discard pile to your hand. Obviously this is just saying essentially pick up an Ignited Arrow, a Battle Aura or an Electric Moth. But the idea of having something do damage when you're chucking it at such heavy damage outputs just means you're getting extra value out of that for the sake of losing some health. Obviously when we lose the health, the reason I run 2 copies is I don't want the math being a bit problematic when it comes to using a response. So I don't want to overload that scenario. Plus it does also have to hit, to be fair. So I don't want to throw all the eggs in a basket when we're just chucking out absolute bombs every time. So let's have a look at the 2 6 diffs that we run. So we run 2 copies of each. We run 0 Gravity Rush because this card, this card's something. So this bad boy says change this attack speed to match its damage. That's just a flat Enhance. It's a 0 high for 4. Obviously Nomu's going to make this 0 high 10, and then you can match that speed. So you're going to go Nomu, make it 10 damage. Your opponent now has 1 Enhance, 1 Enhance to do something before you match the speed now to whatever that damage is at. The idea, if they've got no damage reduction and you go, cool, this is now a 10 high 10 after 2 enhances, is, yeah, it's busted. It also allows us to say if we have 3 or more face downs, draw 2 cards. Again, ultimate value. All of our stuff practically flips or comes in face down. So, like, honestly, you're always going to get that draw 2. This card's just as silly. I run 2 copies of this simply down to the fact I didn't want to go too heavy on the 6 diffs in general, because Nomu actually doesn't really care. 4 diffs and 5 diffs are actually great because he's just giving them such extra flat damage. Then we go to one of the funniest cards ever, Calorie Counter. It's a nice 6 diff, and you might think, wow, this is another 6 diff. 3 mid for 6, but the fun part of this is if the last attack was blocked, it gets -3 diff and +2 speed. So it's actually 5 speed for 12 in Nomu, and it comes out as a 3 diff. Now, this is also great when you use Ignited Arrow and they block, and you find one of these. It's just a funny combo. Everyone does it, to be fair. It's nothing special, but it hits like an absolute ton of bricks. Also, if it does get blocked, we gain 2 health and flip a rival foundation. I mean, what's not to love about a card that just says, listen, I'm probably going to play this for less than it really should be coming out in, hitting you for a ton and forcing you to block, and then I'm going to gain health and then turn off a piece of yours. Card's great. Card is great. So that is the attacks. So I'm going to now sprint through quite literally all of the foundations because they're all very straightforward. Again, this is a very much a no-brain deck kind of scenario. It's a kind of forte of mine, and let's just run through it. So starting off with the 0 diffs, we have number 10 Pro Hero. This is entirely in for the 1 high block and a 6 check. There is nothing special about this, but it is going to let us build some slightly better turns and have foundations that are flippable for things like Battle Aura release. We then run 4 copies of Quick to Act. This is also again a 0 diff that has a kind of cool enhance, but honestly it very rarely gets to that stage. If your current health is less than half of your maximum health, your attack gets +1 speed. It is good when you're getting to that spot of like, okay, we've taken a bunch of damage, now we're coming in for the attacks, let's just chuck extra speed on it. It actually does come into play a few times, but at the same time, it's mostly there just as a utilisation of a 0 diff, really, to be quite honest. Right, let's run through the 1 diffs, because there's quite a few 2 diffs in this. The 1 diffs all kind of play a nice role. Ferocious Attacker just says, flip, if your rival's lost health, this turn you draw a card. I like this over things like Chivalrous because I would rather have an attack hit and then draw rather than me draw and you draw. I don't want the idea of my opponent getting cards. I want that scenario to be as limited as possible. So I think this one's a good trade-off personally, and I kind of just run with it with a lot of decks. We then run 3 copies of High Value Target. This is another one of those ones. Nomu is allowed to block, so I like this card because when we're committing it to pass checks to play blocks, it counts as 2. So it means again we're kind of getting around this whole 5-hander scenario because we build these and we've actually got 6 foundations in play for blocking. I like that a lot. Also, the response can come into play, I guess, to some degree, but we're not really too bothered about it. But either way, before one of your foundations would be destroyed to a rival effect, destroy this foundation instead. Very rarely is it going to come into play when you see all the rest of the cards as such, but it's nice to know it's there. We run 4 copies of Manly Passionate Guy. This is just one of the best cards from set 1, in my opinion. Being able to flip after you block with a foundation, build it face up. There's nothing bad about this card. I just love it so much. Solely down to the fact that we can block with cards that otherwise are hard to build, and then get value out of just being able to have them played in after blocking. Again, Nomu's allowed to block. Now, as I say that, Nomu allowed to block, Nomu also is allowed to punish you for not blocking. So we run 4 copies of Male Bonding. This is just another one of those ones. It's mostly in for a 3 low block, just because I needed some extra lows. But again, I also want to punish you for when I do use my response, which is the setting something to 6 damage. This allows us to flip after you take damage from the unblocked attack, build the top card of your deck face down. Again, if we're committing something and going cool, we're taking 6. I like the idea that we now build something as well, so it kind of like offsets the cost. Now let's have a look at the 2 diffs. Let's run through these. I run 1 Moment of Normalcy. This is a unique. I am very heavily always in the camp of if it's unique, I really tend to just run 1. Occasionally in some more comp heavy decks I'll run maybe 2 or 3, but in a 5-hander I don't want to see this if I've already played 1. So I like this as a 1 copy scenario. Also, if we really wanted to, things like Tetra Terra could pick it up if that was ever a scenario. This just, as I say, lets us return this attack to its printed speed or damage. This is just one of those ones. We can use this instead of using Nomu as a scenario, and maybe the damage becomes even less. It's things like that I like about it. But overall, it's just kind of there as an extra piece in general. I then run 2 copies of Moth Monster. Again, Nomu's allowed to block. I'm going to continue saying this. I like the idea of blocking. Like, even in my little wall of Nomu, I like it. So being able to commit this for -2 speed, and if we've taken damage instead it goes to -3, just lets us have a good option to blocking and stuff like that when there's cards that we can actually just be like, cool, we can deal with this. Also, it runs 6 check, so I'm not going to complain. Then I run 2 copies of Titanic Combat. This one is kind of similar to Male Bonding. It's really in for the response, to be honest. Which is after we take damage from an unblocked attack, build the top card of your deck face down committed. I like the idea that this one commits instead of flips. Obviously, I could potentially throw the numbers around, but there's quite a few 2s in here, so I thought 2 of this was slightly better overall. But then it also has enhanced that also comes into play. Your attack commit, this attack is +2 damage, and your rival commits 1 foundation. I like the idea of getting 2 damage and stun 1 essentially. I think it's quite fun, but again, we don't need to be committing lots of things to do all extra damage. This would just be to lock out a game, but as I say, most of the time it's off the top response to give us a bit more of a stage to actually do those attack runs. We then go into 3 copies of Weapon Clash. So Weapon Clash is another one of these funny ones that actually balances out all of these face downs that could get built. Obviously, when we're building these face downs from the top of the deck, they could actually end up being attacks and stuff like that. We don't really have any other way to get those cards out of the staging area in this deck specifically. So I like the idea of being able to destroy a face down foundation for -2 damage. I like that because it can mean that we can be like, cool, let's get that sort of stuff back into the discard pile for things like Tetra Terra to find it. But on top of that, we can also just flip to build the top card of your face down committed from the deck. That's also good because again, we can just ramp the staging area and then go in for these kind of killer turns, knowing we've just thrown out absolute bombs every time. We then run into 2 copies of Toughest Punk and Junior High. Honestly, this could just be 4 of. It really could be 4 of. At current testing, I like it at 2, but honestly, it probably should be 4 if I'm being honest. This might change at some point in the future. The reason I kept it down a couple was I was finding that it didn't really matter too heavily because of another card later in the deck. So I kind of like this as a 2. It's a kind of like 2 and 2 scenario that you'll see later on. But again, this also allows us to flip before you take damage from an attack, reduce the damage you would take by 3. So you can Nomu to set it to 6, flip one of these to set it to 3, flip both to set it to 0, stuff like that. The options are great. Again, you really could run this as 4 and I would not blame you for it. Next up, we have a copy of Web of Blades. This card just messes with everybody every single time. It messes with absolutely everybody. Before your attack's block step, if its speed is less than printed, it gets +2 speed, and it does the exact same for damage on the second response. It's again unique. I run 1 copy, but this one's also great for the amount of times people will hit you with like a cheeky -1 or -2 speed when they're going to come into the block scenario, and then a lot of times you go, cool, respond, +2 speed, and now their math's out the window. Almost happens all the time when people forget it's in play. The amount of times I've won games because somebody's done the combat math wrong, not realising this is in play or forgetting it's in play, is actually quite high. Now I run 2 copies of one of my favourite cards ever. This goes in almost every Nomu deck I've ever built. Prehensile Tail. This is my kind of nice solution to not having to run 2 copies of Dark Tournament Looms. I like this one a lot. It gives me a foundation, gives me something to do with it and stuff like that as well. And I just like it a little bit more because I know it's there. This one says flip. If you have 4 or more face downs, including this card, add 1 momentum to your hand, or your rival discards 1 momentum. In this day and age, actually forcing your opponent to waste their momentum can actually become pretty useful. But I like this, as I say, it's a Dark Tournament Looms on a foundation. Just give me something. I like it a lot. The Deadlock Enhance is applicable to like 2 attacks in the deck, but it does give them 3 damage and gains them throw. Probably it could become a scenario of it being useful. Obviously you would have to give it the damage with no move first, then make it a throw, just so you remember. We run 2 copies of New Training Method. This is another one of those ones that I think 2 is just the right number personally. Like, I just think it's a nice number to keep it at. You probably again could run so many of these as 3 and 4 copies. I just like it where it's at. So this says after you build this card, build one foundation for your hand committed. This allows us to play some of the ultra regens and stuff like that out on the cheap, i.e. for free, because we just don't play them and then we just build them. And they're a tenacious ability, so we're loving this so much. And then also the response commit flip. After you check a foundation, add it to your hand. Again, we're a 5-hander. We've got to rely on draw. This one ultimately just says that. This just says, cool, we've checked a foundation that's of maybe some use, bring it up. Or we've checked something but we're playing into Electric Moth. Maybe we just need the card to discard to draw 2. The option's still there. I then run 4 copies of Learning the Standard. This is what we are going to call my crutches. This is going to be my crutches for sure. Like I can't even think of any other way to defend this card. This is silly. This card says, remove after you take damage from an unblocked attack. Your rival must play a non-attack card as their next form or end their combat phase. Again, we run 4 copies of this. We want to see this as much as possible. If I'm hitting the Nomu button and reducing the damage to 6, I want my male bondings, I want my Titanics building me stuff, and then forcing you to not play an attack or pass turn. Again, card can end the turn. It's great. We love it to bits. It also does technically have a top enhance that honestly I almost forget ever exists because it's not really there for anything. After your rival builds an asset or foundation during the combat phase, flip it. It honestly could come up, to be fair, in this kind of like world we're in nowadays. That actually is probably a valid ability. Do I want it there for that? Not in the slightest. It's getting removed the moment I push the Nomu button. And then the last card we run is 3 copies of Ultra Regeneration. This is kinda the reason why I don't run too many Toughest Punks, because I like sometimes taking 5 damage and then responding with this to draw 2 and then gain 2 health. If I'm reducing the damage from Toughest Punks and stuff like that, this won't pop as often. It's also got a 6 check and it's a 2 low. And the enhance, honestly, I've never read it. Let's read it now. Remove if you have no ready foundations, add 1 card from your discard pile to your hand. Yeah, that's never going to happen. This card's always going to be flipped when I've pushed the Nomu button. Just saying. That is what it is. But there is my deck, everybody. This is what I had built. Took to Alicante, had 1 game against Theo and had a really good time playing against his overhaul. And yeah, I kind of want to test this a little bit more, which brings me on to kind of the reason why this is even getting made, which is on Saturday we have a AceManeuvers event happening over on the TTS, the Tabletop Simulators. So you can just build this for free. It's not going to cost you a penny other than owning the game. And we have some really cool information which I'll flag up here, which is the trading post are also putting in some hefty prizes in the form of $1,000 of cash incentives and other stuff. So again, I'll have that up here so you can all see it, but I would like to see as many people as possible playing in these kind of decks. Hero 2 format for me personally is like retro light. I honestly love that. Retro's my thing. I like anything that can bridge that gap. So this is also very much a format for me, and I'll definitely be pushing it. I would love in the comments below, give us a few character suggestions of what you would like me to have a look at. For instance, just chuck a few characters out there and be like, hey, what do you come up with? Pick the symbol as well, right? Pick the symbol and just chuck something out, and let's see what I come up with, because I do want to try and build a lot of decks this year, and especially for the Hero 2 format. So, thank you very much everyone, and I will catch you all in the next video, which will come out probably sometime next week. See you later on everyone.